living under the rule of Karen Hendricks, president of the Maplewood Pines HOA, felt less like suburban life and more like enduring a dictatorship with picket fences. She was everywhere, prowling the sidewalks, snapping photos of recycling bins left out too long, berating teenagers for skateboarding, scribbling violations with her trusty clipboard. When I first moved in, I tried to stay out of her way. Keep the lawn neat. Paint the shutters in approved taupe. Wave politely when her SUV crawled past like a patrol car. But it was impossible not to notice the way she bullied everyone. She barked at old Mr. Callahan for hanging a flag on his porch without the board's approval. She'll fine the Jennings family because their toddler's inflatable pool was unsightly. She even left nasty notes on windshields about parking slightly askew. Everyone tolerated her out of fear. But I always wondered what would finally bring her down. I never expected it to come in the form of a delivery driver just trying to do his job. It happened on a sweltering Thursday afternoon. I had ordered some new patio furniture, and the delivery truck pulled up just as I was watering the lawn. The driver, a young guy in his 20s named Marcus, hopped out with a cheerful wave. He maneuvered a large box toward my front steps, sweat dripping down his forehead. That's when Karen appeared. She'd been walking her little white dog, clipboard in tow, as if the sidewalks themselves needed supervision. She stopped at the edge of my yard, her lips pinched in disapproval. "Those boxes better not block the sidewalk," she snapped. "They won't," Marcus said politely, balancing the box against his hip. "Just delivering for the Turners." "MMHM," Karen said, tapping her pen against the clipboard. "You drivers are always careless. Dragging mud, scratching up concrete. I'll be watching." Marcus gave me a look, the kind delivery people give when they're too polite to say what they're really thinking. He started up the steps. But just as he reached the top, Karen suddenly stepped forward, pointing at a patch of grass. "Hey, you're crushing the begonias," she shouted, jabbing her finger. Marcus instinctively turned his head to see what she meant. In that split second, Karen's foot shot out. It was subtle, deliberate, but unmistakable. Her sneaker hooked the edge of his boot as he stepped down. Everything slowed. Marcus lurched sideways, the heavy box shifting in his grip. His arms flailed as he tried to regain balance. Then he went down hard. The box toppled onto the walkway with a crash. Marcus's arm twisted beneath him. The sickening crack that followed made my stomach turn. He screamed. I dropped the hose and ran. Marcus was on the ground, clutching his arm, his face pale and contorted with pain. The angle of his wrist told me all I needed to know. It was broken, badly. Karen gasped theatrically, clutching her chest. "Oh dear," he tripped. "Such clumsiness. I told you delivery people are careless." "Are you kidding me?" I shouted. "You tripped him?" "I saw you." Karen's eyes flashed. "Don't you dare accuse me." He wasn't watching his step. "Not my fault if he's incompetent." Marcus groaned, beads of sweat rolling down his forehead. "Lady, you stuck your foot out." I pulled out my phone and called 911, my hands trembling with anger. As I spoke to the dispatcher, neighbors began trickling out of their houses, drawn by the commotion. Mr. Callahan, Mrs. Jennings. Even a couple walking their dog, all of them had heard Marcus's scream, and several had seen what I had seen. By the time the paramedics arrived, Karen was pacing in circles, muttering loudly about false accusations and people ganging up on her. But no amount of denial could drown out the truth. Too many witnesses had seen her trip him. The paramedics loaded Marcus into the ambulance. His arms splinted and strapped. Before they left, he looked at me, his voice shaky but firm. "Tell the cops what she did, I will," I promised. The police arrived minutes later. Officer Daniels, a stocky man with a calm demeanor, listened as I explained what happened. He asked the neighbors what they saw, scribbling notes. Each testimony lined up. Karen had stuck her foot out deliberately. When it was Karen's turn to speak, she scoffed. Ridiculous. He wasn't paying attention. I don't even know what they think they saw. Maybe he tripped over his own shoelaces. Officer Daniels raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, 3 separate witnesses say otherwise." She crossed her arms, her voice rising. "Well, they're all lying. Everyone in this neighborhood has been against me since day one. They're jealous because I care about community standards. But Daniels wasn't buying it. He explained that Marcus was pressing charges for assault. Karen's face turned red. Assault? I'm the victim here. This is harassment. Still, when the cuffs clicked around her wrists, the smug superiority drained from her expression. She sputtered protests as they guided her to the cruiser, her little dog barking furiously from the sidewalk. For the first time since I'd moved into Maplewood Pines, Karen Hendricks wasn't in control. That night, the neighborhood buzzed with whispers. Some couldn't believe Karen had finally crossed the line. Others admitted they weren't surprised. It was only a matter of time, Mrs. Jennings said. She's always been a menace. As for me, I sat on my porch long after the sun went down, replaying the scene in my mind. The crack of bone, the look on Marcus's face, the cold calculation in Karen's eyes. This wasn't just another petty HOA squabble. This was criminal. And for once, Karen wasn't going to bully her way out of it. The morning after Karen's arrest, Maplewood Pines felt lighter. For once, people weren't nervously glancing over their shoulders for her SUV creeping down the street. Kids rode bikes without fear of reprimand. Neighbors lingered to chat as if a storm had passed. But the relief was tempered by what lay ahead. Karen wasn't just going to vanish quietly. The assault charge was serious. Marcus, the delivery driver, had undergone surgery to set the bone in his forearm. Screws and a plate were inserted. The doctors told him he'd need months of physical therapy. His company filed workplace injury reports, and he personally pressed charges. The state picked it up. Suddenly, Karen wasn't facing petty HOA disputes anymore. She was staring down a criminal case at first. From her house, she shouted at anyone who walked by. False witnesses. She called us. You'll regret lying in court. Flyers appeared on mailboxes. Printed with her version of the story, Marcus was reckless. I was leading a witch hunt, and the neighbors had banded together in jealousy. Most people tossed the papers straight into the trash. The court date arrived 2 months later. By then, the neighborhood had become a strange mix of tension and camaraderie. We carpooled to the courthouse, determined to testify. Marcus, his arms still stiff in a brace, greeted us with gratitude. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with determination. The courtroom was packed. Karen sat at the defense table, hair tightly pinned, lips pressed into a scowl. She wore a blazer too sharp for the occasion, as if clothing could project authority. Her attorney, a harried man who looked like he regretted taking the case, shuffled papers. Nervously, the prosecution laid out the facts clearly. Marcus had been doing his job, delivering a package. Karen had confronted him, shouted distractions, and deliberately tripped him, causing a severe fracture. They called witnesses, me, Mr. Callahan, Mrs. Jennings, and even a teenager who'd been skateboarding nearby. Each of us told the same story. Karen stuck out her foot. Marcus fell. The sound of his arms snapping was something none of us would forget. Karen's defense was weak. Her attorney tried to argue Marcus was clumsy, that maybe he lost his balance under the heavy box. But the weight of testimony crushed that claim. The prosecutor even played footage from my doorbell camera the grainy video clearly showed. Karen's leg jutting out at the exact moment Marcus stepped down. The courtroom gasped. Karen's face drained of color. When it was her turn to testify, Karen's arrogance returned in full force. She launched into a tirade about her role as HOA president, about community standards, about how she had been harassed by jealous neighbors for years. She claimed Marcus had orchestrated a fall to make her look bad. The judge, a stern woman with little patience, cut her off. Mrs. Hendricks, this is not about HOA politics. This is about whether you intentionally caused harm to another person. Answer the question. Did you extend your leg toward the victim? Karen stammered. I don't recall. Maybe I shifted my weight. The judge's eyebrows arched. That will suffice. The trial wrapped quickly after that. The evidence was overwhelming, the witnesses united, and Karen's own testimony self-destructive. When the verdict came, the courtroom fell silent. The judge's voice rang clear. We find the defendant guilty of misdemeanor assault resulting in bodily injury. Karen let out a strangled noise, half gasp, half shriek. Her attorney placed a hand on her shoulder, but she jerked away. "This is corruption," she shouted. "They're all conspiring against me." The judge banged her gavel. "Enough. You've had your say." The sentence was swift: probation, mandatory anger management classes, and restitution to Marcus for medical expenses and lost wages. It wasn't prison, but it was a conviction, a permanent stain on her record. Outside the courthouse, Marcus broke into tears of relief. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice shaking. "If it weren't for you all, she would have gotten away with it." I put a hand on his good shoulder. She finally met people she couldn't bully. Back in Maplewood Pines, the fallout was immediate. Karen was stripped of her HOA presidency. The board voted her out unanimously, citing her criminal conviction and pattern of disruptive behavior. Neighbors who once cowered at her clipboard now openly celebrated her downfall. Someone even baked a cake decorated with the words, "Justice serve." Karen, of course, refused to go quietly. For weeks, she sulked on her porch, muttering about appeals and conspiracies. But her power was gone. The HOA no longer enforced her petty rules. Fines disappeared. Meetings became friendly instead of hostile. The community began to heal. One evening, as I sat on my porch, I saw Marcus drive by in his delivery truck. He slowed, honked once, and lifted his good arm in a wave. His brace was gone, replaced with cautious movements. I waved back, my chest swelling with something I hadn't felt since moving here: pride. Because for once, justice hadn't bent to power. It hadn't favored the loudest, meanest voice in the room. It had listened to the truth, and the truth had toppled a tyrant. The Maplewood Pines HOA would never be the same, and neither would Karen.